tackle. They want to be the blindside protector, and that's what those guys want to do. So you combine that with getting a huge payday, and it's a no-brainer for him. But I'm anxious to see how he does over there on that left-hand side. I mean, he's got one of the best quarterbacks in the league at evading the pass rush, so I'm sure that will make his mistakes seem a little less impactful. But anxious to see how he does. Definitely hope that Josh Allen gets about 8 sacks on him this year. Would love to see that, but I do wish him the best, except when he's playing here in Duval next fall.
Yeah, for sure. Orlando Brown, like such a great left tackle. You know, a lot of times you'll see left tackles stand the test of time, especially if the team has a franchise quarterback and there's a good relationship and good communication there. And they could have re-signed Orlando Brown maybe for less than what they're paying for Juwan, but he's going to go find a new home, obviously, and probably go be great for somebody else. But I think Juwan's ready for that jump. He proved himself this year, and from the end of the season, it was kind of obvious that it was going to be a gigantic payday that we just weren't going to have the room for. And that's all well and good for him. I'm excited for his future, but I'm way more excited because it's Walker Little time now, and it's time for him to build on what he did this year and really be the dude on that left side.
Yeah, Walker Little really proved a lot to us, I think, with the playoff run and stepping up late in the year. He was a valuable asset for the team. And I would have been comfortable still, keeping Jawan Taylor and having Little sit as a swing tackle, just because I think that really good teams do have that depth on the offensive line. But, at the same time, Walker Little's deserving of a starting job. I think by the end of the year, if not much earlier, he'll have it figured out on the right side. He'll be a good, solid player over there. It will be a transition for him because he's taken most of his snaps on the left side of the offensive line. But, I have confidence in him doing that job, and they still got 2 years left of him on a rookie deal. So it's smarter for the organization. It saves money down the road. And, you look at what Jawan Taylor was paid. You just can't compete with that. It would have been a very reckless decision to go that route, in all honesty. So I got a question regarding this. At this point, with Jawan Taylor being gone, and you've got on your offensive line Cam Robinson, who had an injury issue last year, has had injuries recent years. Walker Little, who had the big injury, I think it was an ACL tear or something in college, hasn't been a problem in the pros. But then you got Brandon Scherf. He just went a full year healthy, but he's had him before. And then Ben Barch, who was out most of the year. Do we really worry about that right now, or just kind of see that as, okay, that's what the past showed, this is a different time, and that's not really going to impact this. If they get injured, they get injured.
I think injuries, sure, we've got some guys that have some injury history, but I think that it's so hard to plan for that. You have to just be comfortable and confident in your training and conditioning staff, here in Jacksonville. I think the answer, is pretty simple. Look what we just did with Walker Little. We drafted him, developed him for 2 years as a backup, and now he's going to be a starter. Let's go do that again. We're not in much of a different position than we were when we picked him a few years ago. I think that that's the key now, and that now we have that need of somebody that's projectable, that can play that swing tackle position or even kick inside. I think injuries, it's tough to be concerned or to have that concern just because they are unpredictable, and it's really tough to project for them or plan for them. All you can do is have depth and hope for the best. I think every team's in that boat.
Yeah, we were talking about it before we signed on, but you mentioned the Chiefs and how they've got some superstars and then some guys that maybe worked at Home Depot last year. You never know, right? But I'd like to see the non-sexy signing of maybe a mid-grade offensive lineman, someone that can come in and compete at camp here in free agency, something that isn't going to make any headlines or whatnot. I'd love to draft someone with a really high upside, like a second, third, maybe even fourth rounder. And then also maybe down in the lower rounds, spend a pick or two and bring some guys in and see what you can get. Every year there's a practice squad guy that blows your mind somewhere. And, that could be that. But I think Alan's hit the nail on the head. Like you can't plan for injuries, and you have to develop your draft picks and just hope for the best and trust your training.
For sure. Because, I mean, most players or fans would have said this last year, like, it's a guarantee that Brandon Scherff gets hurt. Like, he's been hurt every year. That's what we expect. And he went the whole year healthy. We didn't really have issues. I think maybe there was a couple snaps he was out one game, but, like, you didn't have any big problems with him. And so, I'm on the same page there. Like, I don't think we can I don't think we should read too much into that. They definitely need depth now, because I think ultimately, like, with your starting offensive line at this point, if one of your tackles goes down, you don't really have anyone you can throw in there. At guard, you can throw in Tyler Shatley like you did last year, but that was not good enough in the playoffs. And then for center, you've also got Tyler Shatley backing up. So there's work that can be done there. It would be nice if they can find a player to bring in that has a lot of versatility, to where, say, they can start at left guard and upgrade that, and then also back up at tackle. Like, that's a dream scenario. Maybe you find that in the draft. Maybe there's someone in free agency that you feel that way about. But that's kind of how I feel on the offensive line at this point. I definitely think they can improve it on the interior, but depth, they definitely got to take a look at. And before we move on from Jawan Taylor as well, I want to take a look kind of at the compensatory pick situation with him and how this works. Just explain it quick. I'm not completely versed in this, but we'll try to kind of get to the point here. These are the rounds that compensatory picks are handed out through. So it goes up to the third round as late as the seventh. And these are awarded, I believe, to the top 35% of players based on their average per year on the contract they're given. So with Jawan Taylor earning $20 million a year, there's a really, really big chance that he's in that top 5%. And so you're landing a third round pick from him. And really the only picks that will jump in front of yours are for players who were paid more than $20 million a year. So that's kind of where we sit on that. I believe as long as we don't go make like a big splash signing in free agency, you will get that compensatory pick. And then we'll also potentially see that if like Arden Key gets signed by another team to a big deal. So we'll at least have one compensatory pick next year, which will be nice. So essentially we're getting a really late third rounder back for Jawan Taylor departing in free agency. And that will be in the 2024 NFL draft. So I just wanted to hit that topic really quick so we get on that.
Well, it's not something that any what I would call casual or even a little bit more than casual Jaguars fan is familiar with if they've only followed the team for 14 years, because I read something the other day that we haven't had a compensatory pick in that long, which is mind-blowing. And there's different reasons for that, the team being terrible and letting star players walk and things like that. There's a whole lot of, I'm not an expert either, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. So from where I'm sitting, if our compensatory pick ends up being Mr. Irrelevant at the very back side of the draft, I'd say that's better than what we've been experiencing lately,
Oh, for sure. Better than nothing.
Absolutely.
So we'll get on to our next topic here. So we've talked
Do you have anything
about...
on that one, Alan, or no?
No, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I don't have anything else to add there.
Gotcha. So yeah, Jawan Taylor is really our big loss today. We've also had two other reports come out. One of them is a report, one of them is a signing. Just I think about an hour and a half ago, we had Chris Manhertz get signed to the Denver Broncos. Very similar contract to what we saw for him when he came onto the team. So actually, I'll pull it up here so you guys can see that. But it was a 2-year, $6 million deal. Let's see if it's updated on here. It might not be actually, but obviously Manhurt's not a big receiving tight end. He's more of a blocking tight end, and that's really what he offered. And we actually don't have it updated on Over the Cap yet, but he was one of our losses today. So it definitely leaves a bit of a need at the tight end position because you really just got Ingram and Farrell. And then the other report we got was that Trey Herndon would not be returning. He's not been signed anywhere officially. He had 3 teams interested in him. I believe 2 of those were the 49ers and the Falcons. I think the third was maybe the Giants. And so kind of shocking that he has a market, but he will not be back in Jacksonville next year by all accounts. So those are really the only guys we've got news on.
Yeah, Trey Herndon, I mean, he's been here for a few years now. He's been great for the city. I know that him and I believe it's his wife, it might be fiance, they have do a lot of charity events here in the city, and he's been a great guy. But I say this as playfully as I can. It was time for him to go. He's been a liability. If you would have told me a year ago that we were trading him for 2 practice helmets and a practice jersey, I probably would have taken it, unfortunately. But definitely thank him for his services. He's been a part of a lot of big moments and big plays. But I think a change of scenery will be good for him, and I think it was time to move on. I think we can get a guy that's just as good with maybe even some upside in the draft. Trey Herndon wasn't an early round pick or anything like that, and then you were just paying him league minimum. So I think that's a win-win for both sides there when it comes to Herndon.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. He's got a market. Stuff flying around the internet calling him burnt toast and things when we were back when we were just mad at everything. Week 6, week 7, we're just sitting around disappointed all the time. Like, how is this happening still? But still trying to understand it before all the magic started kicking in, right? He was, I mean, not a lot better than Shaq Griffin, but somebody had to play nickel, so he was out there, and I appreciate him being around, and I'm happy that he's got a market. That is a need for several teams. He might be one of the guys that ends up going to Indy or going to the Texans for a few thousand more dollars or something, just to be somebody that's been an insider on the team to one of our rivals. I could see that happening pretty easily, but thank you. I think that we can find someone in the mid rounds maybe that could fill that slot. Or it may be another one of those, like I talked about, one of those kind of mid-grade free agent signings that you bring him in to compete, and he's just happy to be in a new environment and blows the doors off of you, I forget who played nickel for us in 2017. Do you remember, Alan?
Oh, man.
He was so good. I'll look him up when we switch to Manhurts here in a second, and I'll mention it when I talk again. But
yeah,
we lost him the following year, I believe, to a big contract, and boy, like he really, he was the unsung hero of that defense while they were making all those sacks.
Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me, but yeah, switching gears over to Chris Stonehand's Manhurts. Similar opinion. I mean, I think he was exciting when he came to Jacksonville. He was a good blocking tight end. I believe we got him from the Titans. But I just think that at the point in his career where he's at, you trot him out there on the field and you're essentially telling the other team that you're running the ball, or at the very least you're not passing it to him. So I think I think he provides that veteran leadership, and he will go do that. But I just don't know that that's a need for Jacksonville at this point in time. Now that we know we have Evan Ingram in that tight end room, Farrell's been around for a couple of years now. They'll go out and get somebody else. I mean, I think those guys that are blocking tight ends can sometimes be a dime a dozen, and that's a pretty easy hole to fill, I think, with probably a guy that's a little bit younger as well.
Yeah, it feels like a luxury pick, really, if we're going to go tight end early in the draft. Like, we don't have to hit the position. And if you look at the way Doug Peterson's used tight ends, you look at Philadelphia, the guys he had. You had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Neither of those players are known for their blocking abilities primarily. They're known for their ability to receive. So we have the same thing with Ingram. And there's even, I think some people would make the argument that, hey, maybe they should bring in a second tight end because we saw them run those two tight ends in Philadelphia. Issue with that and why tight end may not really be something we want to spend an early pick on is ultimately you're going to take someone off the field that you should have on the field at receiver. Like you're pulling Christian Kirk off the field because you're putting a guy in the slot over him, either Evan Ingram or the guy they draft, say it's like Dalton Kincaid, or you're pulling off, say, Zay Jones off the field. And so you're not really adding a ton to your offense. It would be nice, but yeah, it's a lot more of a luxury. And we've got a question in the chat right now. We've got 11 people watching right now. Thank you all for joining us. It's we're definitely getting off to a good start here. I don't know if the first couple minutes streamed, but it's working now, so that's good. But we've got an obvious question here. When are the Jaguars going to get anybody in free agency? And so we kind of talked about this, I think, right at the beginning. I'm not sure it was shown on the video. Maybe it'll be shown on the recap or when you watch it after. We're not sure if there's going to be any moves tonight, but there should be something done, in the next couple days. I think with Arden Key, he's probably testing out the market right now, seeing what offers he's going to get. It might be a few days on him. I think we could see the smaller players come in, but we have got some interesting rumors going around about Sean Murphy-Bunting being a guy they're interested in. And then we had one other guy from Houston. I just keep forgetting the name of nonstop. It was Tavier Thomas. So for you guys, I mean, when do you think we're really going to see the first move here? Who do you think's going to come here?
Hard to say. It seems like you can't really, you can't believe anything you see in the media almost, until you see it from 17 different sources and Adam Schefter. It's kind of wild. It seems like it's all speculation. Before I finish that thought, if you were listening a minute ago, I was trying to remember the nickel corner from 2017, and it was Aaron Colvin. And that was a name that, with all those other names on that 2017 defense, nobody ever talked about him, but he was so good at football at that nickel corner position. So I want to make sure I didn't forget him. I can circle back around to my thoughts on Manhurts later too, but it would be cool, just as a fan, to see a deal with Arden Key get done, tomorrow. I think you're right, Jacob. I think it may be a couple days. He's going to see if someone wants to come out of their shoes to pay him to come play there, and that'll fall into consideration for him. And, he had a good year, and pass rushers that's how you win football games these days. So that would be my hope, I would say. But who we actually get, if I was a betting man, I think the whole theme of this free agency is going to be not sexy. And I think you might see a veteran offensive lineman who's not very famous or someone like that get signed first.
Yeah, I think about the trade we made for Cole Van Lanen early last year. We traded a 6th round pick for him. I think it's that kind of guy. And obviously not a trade, but in the free agent market. But I don't see us going out and getting a big name. And frankly, we just don't have the money, and they'd have to figure out a way to restructure or make another move. But I just don't see that happening at this point. I think they're pretty content. Obviously we're going to get some guys, some veterans, free agents that come in, and we're going to hype them up and talk them up and get really excited. And then, they're in the end, they're just going to be veteran free agents, but I'm looking forward to that and seeing who they pick up.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some different routes they can go. And actually, if we want here for a second, we can take a look at some of these players they've been linked to and some of the information on them. All in Discord for you guys that are in here. We've got a screen share just going up, so if you guys want to join that, you can see what we've got, or you can watch the video itself. But we'll take a look at some of these guys. We'll go on PFF for it, so we can look at their snaps and all. So we'll start with Sean Murphy-Bunting. And so he was one of our guys that we mentioned probably about a month ago as a free agent to target. He's a player who ultimately got overshadowed a lot this last year by Jamel Dean, who, funny enough, was linked to the Jaguars last night for some reason. And he's a pretty solid player. He's not one of the best, but he's a slot corner. As we see here, this shows our snap counts for everything. So he's played less in the slot this last year, but he's got considerable experience there. Then if you go farther in time, you see his snaps go up there. He's going to be a versatile corner to bring in, probably more versatile than what Tavier Thomas would be from the Houston Texans. As far as a person too, he's got good character. You're not going to be worried about anything like that. And value, which really in free agency is just kind of all over the place. Like, we don't always know exactly what a player is going to earn. Like Jawan Taylor getting $20 million a year to play left tackle in Kansas City. I'm guessing that Sean Murphy-Bunting's probably going around like $5 to $6 million. And the Tavier Thomas, you guys actually, while I'm pulling him up, you guys got any thoughts on Sean Murphy-Bunting? You guys know much about him, or?
I don't. I'm sort of reading up on him a little bit now, and my initial reaction, I did see that link last night, and my initial reaction is it's never a bad thing to have someone that used to play with Tom Brady. And was he around for their Super Bowl run too?
Yes, he was drafted in 2019, so he's been there 4 years.
Okay, so, and he's young, obviously. So, like, I mean, I think it's never a bad thing to have a Super Bowl champion on your roster, right? Or as many as you can get, because they've been there before and they can help. Maybe it's weird to think of a fifth-year player as a leader, but I don't think so, especially in a position that's dominated by the youth, at the cornerback role. So to have him in the room, like, I'd be more than happy to bring him in for that reason.
Yeah, Dennis, I mean, I think you said exactly what I was thinking there. I was, looking at, he's played for a team that's won a Super Bowl. He's been around some incredible coaching and an incredible defense that they had there in Tampa Bay. So, yeah, I think it's all positives, and then you get some decent production from him. Whatever production he's been providing the past couple of years, if he can stay on that, and then it's just a matter of, can we afford him? With our limited cap space, and hopefully he sticks around out there on the open market for a couple of days, and it seems like the longer we get away from the tampering period starting this afternoon, the contract dollar amounts start to dwindle. So it'd be nice to get him if we can get him in here affordably and go from there.
You don't want to risk the payment of Trevor Lawrence and hinge it on Sean Murphy-Bunting. Are you crazy?
Yeah, I mean, he'd take a sizable amount out of that.
Yeah.
Like 15%, quite a bit. He's also a guy who's, I would consider him an ascending player. And he finished the year really well in Tampa. He's definitely one of their leaders, one of their better players. If it means anything to you guys, he picked off Mahomes in week 4 this last year, so that's cool. You always gotta love that. But
never gonna be mad at that.
Exactly. I mean, he's like our number one enemy now going forward, or obviously the guy to beat. So, like, Sean Murphy-Bunting's kind of that affordable, ascending player that you feel like if you put him in a good role with Jacksonville, you get really good bang for your buck. It's sort of like, to me, it's like your bet on Arden Key last year, but you're taking that at cornerback. And you could also say that with Tavier Thomas, which we'll look at as well. He's got really good grades on PFF. I'm not sure it necessarily is a accurate representation to the fullest, but he's one of the guys I know the Texans fans are really big on. One of their better secondary players, and that's one of their strengths on their team. He's a big part of that. And we see as well, played a ton in the slot. That's primarily where he plays. 582 snaps there last year for the team. And he's another player who really upgrades you over Trey Herndon. And ultimately, I think you can say with Trey Herndon being off this team now, you've only got 2 cornerbacks that you feel like can start on the field at this point. Because I don't include Monteric Brown or say like a Chris Claybrooks or what's our guy, Gregory Jr. that we got last year.
Oh God, please no Chris Claybrooks.
I don't consider them starting on the team.
Oh
so
God.
It's like watching Drew Smiley in the World Series for all you baseball fans. It's not what you want.
Oh no, does not pass to say it out loud, Death. That's for sure.
It was rough to watch the punt go directly off his helmet at the wild card game. That was killer. But yeah, we've really got 2 corners that you feel comfortable having on the field. And Trey Herndon was already very questionable in that role. So they have to get someone. I mean, that's how I feel on it. Like, they cannot go into the draft without having signed a cornerback, whether we think that cornerback is great or not. And so you also look at like how often the Jaguars are running these slot corners on the field. It's about 75% of the time. So you can consider that player a starter when you look at this team. So Tavier Thomas, another player that fits the bill. He's not going to be as versatile. You could probably force him outside. It's not ideal, though. You see, like, height's a disadvantage for him, but hey, Darius Williams does it at 5'10", too. But Tavier Thomas would be a really underrated signing they could go after. These are really the 2 players we've seen linked to them so far. So, give you a little bit of information on that. Now, you guys want to... Yeah?
Oh, I was going to jump in if you're ready.
Oh, you're good.
Cool. This would be more likely of a signing, I think.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think you're going to pay less for him. He's going to fit the role just fine. He is, his numbers look great on here. And cornerbacks right after the pass rush are like everything, and you in this league today, in this pass-heavy league, you have to have people, and you made a great point, Jacob. We don't have more than 2, and I think that's why we're heavily linked to a cornerback in the first or second round of the draft. I don't disagree with that move, depending on who we can get in free agency. But I think if you can bring him in, you've got a guy from a division rival, which the team may look different next year anyway, and that's fine. But he's going to check the box, and you can go into the draft not having to worry about that position. And maybe, he was on a terrible football team and still did well. So if you give him a better than half decent football team in Jacksonville, imagine what his ceiling could be then.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Dennis. I mean, I know we are talking about the lack of depth. I am excited to, well, I guess let me take a step back. I made my opinion known on Chris Claybrooks, so I don't have to talk about him anymore, but I am excited to see Gregory Jr. I think there was a reason they went and found him from the tiny little school that he came from and drafted him last year. So I don't think he's going to be an impact player or anything, but I'm definitely excited to see him, compete in training camp and in the preseason next year.
Yeah, we can't bury players just after 1 year, unless they're Caleb Chase on, it's fine.
Yeah, he can go. He can go.
That one, not to sidetrack from it, that one killed me because honestly, he was a player I wanted this team to select. I hate to say that, but
I did not.
The reason why was because at that point, players didn't want to come to Jacksonville, and seeing him like sporting a Jaguars shirt like during his pre-combine workouts and stuff, I was like, okay, that's the kind of guy we need. We need a good pass rusher because you obviously think your draft pick's going to be good, right? And we need a guy who wants to be here. And so, I was thrilled at that pick because he was supposed to go earlier in the draft, but man, it just it never worked out with him. Now, the other guy I wanted was Justin Jefferson, so I liked that one a bit more. That was a little closer to what they should have done.
Jefferson was a stud, while Chason, if you look up LSU in the dictionary, you'll see a picture of Chason right there staring back at you because he's hyped up, supposed to be great every year, and you get to midseason and he's terrible. He's awful. Get him out of here as fast as possible. Holy cow.
Now, do you think he's actually going to stick around this year? Because he, we'll show it on here so you guys can see this, because this was one thing we talked about in some of our videos. He's got
just
a
don't
bit
know.
of savings if he gets claimed.
Yeah, but is he better than the guy that's replacing him, or is the guy that's replacing him any better? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think they're going to have a tough time cutting him because he's not terribly expensive, and it's a tough time cutting a guy that you drafted in the first round who's still in a rookie contract. And I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
you just think, can you unlock it? Like it's worth that rookie contract, even though it's on year 4 now, to see if you can unlock it. Give it one last chance.
he's been pretty good on special teams, which, I mean, that's not where you want your first round pick to be playing football at, but to have him around for another year, like you said, and just, another year with the coaching staff and whatnot, and just see, it doesn't cost you anything, but I would think after this year, he'll be shipping out of town.
I think it was Baselli who said it. It was one of the guys on Jaguars Happy Hour, but they were talking about how, like, with Caleb on Chason, you just have to wipe it out of your memory that he's a first-round pick. Like, you have to look at him as a guy you're hoping can be a rotational player on your team. And
I cannot wipe that from my memory, but I do
can't
agree
either,
with you.
right? But, like, that's how you should try to look at it. And when we look at the numbers, here's what you got to consider. So you can either trade him if someone sends you anything. It could be a conditional 7th rounder like you got for Josh Oliver. But literally anything you get back for him, and you get to save this amount here, which is about $2.4 million.
How tough is that? That, like, you have a former first round pick, and we can all sit here and definitely agree that 7th round draft capital is better than him, the player on our football team. That is insane.
For $2.4 million.
That's not exactly what we're saying. What we're saying is that having the money available is worth more. So, like, here's the argument. If you trade him for anything, or he gets claimed off waivers when you release him, then you save this amount here. Now, if you just cut him and he doesn't get claimed, this whole amount for his cap number is dead cap. So you save nothing, and then you also have to pay whoever takes that guy's place money to play here. So the question really becomes, if you're able to trade him for anything, or you're able to get him claimed off waivers by another team, which is a bit of a gamble, and I think he would be. He's a former first-round pick. Someone's going to take a shot and think they can resurrect his career. But then the question is, you look at this number here, is that worth having on your roster being paid that? Because you're already guaranteed to pay him this $1.8 million figure. So the question is he worth this much? It's kind of like,
who are you going to?
Yeah,
I don't know that you're going to get somebody better to replace him for that amount of money. I think that's the question, and is it worth the risk? I mean, a trade, yes, but I don't think it's worth the risk of cutting him and hoping somebody takes a shot on him. I mean, I'm sure they will, but I don't know. I don't know who you're going to sign to replace him with $2.4 million. That's going to be a whole lot better than he will. They certainly won't have the potential or the athleticism. It'll probably be an older guy.
I mean, peeling another layer off the Baselli onion here with wipe it from your memory. Like, this isn't really going to end well for us. But the thought is that this is the last time that you have something like this happen. You hope,
Yeah, I don't think we'll screw up that big again, but or I think that won't be as common, I'll say, because that whole draft was a nightmare. I mean, to talk about taking draft capital that you've accumulated in trades and just throwing it in the trash. Because, I mean, if we look at, like, this draft class and why we're actually in a decent cap situation next year, which we'll actually transition into talking about a little bit here. Part of the reason why the cap situation is so good is because you don't have anyone to re-sign from that draft class. Because this next year coming up after the 2023 season, you're re-signing your guys from, would it be the 2019 draft class that had their 5th-year option picked up. So that's Josh Allen. And then your 2020 draft class, every player who didn't have a 5th-year option. So both your first rounders, you're not re-signing them. I mean, unless Cale Von Chason has his breakout, Superman season, which no one is expecting on this planet, as far as I know. And so you're really looking at okay, Josh Allen, obviously from the previous class, but it's Devon Hamilton and Ben Barch. Barely any money tied up. So it actually helps the cap a lot the next year just because that draft class was so bad.
Yeah, well, I would take a good draft class, obviously, over that position, but that is an interesting way to think about it, and it will benefit
us. It's a silver
us.
lining.
Yeah, it'll benefit us when it comes to having to pay Trevor and getting in a position to line up our future for the long term. Because really, all the stuff that we've done over the last 13 months, 12, 13 months, has really just put us in kind of a holdover position and given us time to align ourselves for the future. I do want to backtrack just a second. You mentioned Tony Baselli. I will say that I take everything he says with a grain of salt. He is a guy that on the radio it was 2020, I believe, that said with 8 games to go, he said, I think we're going to win the last 8 games in the playoffs, and then proceeded to argue and defend his position on 10XL here in town for a long time. So I do take everything he says with a grain of salt. But obviously he's awesome, Jaguar great. Can't say anything bad about him. But sometimes he has some interesting takes.
Yeah, he's a hot take Tony. A term that's thrown around locally, and he comes up with some. It's kind of like he wakes up 5 minutes before the radio show and goes, "What am I going to talk about today?" And then just fires off the first thing he thinks about. Sometimes that's what it feels
How can I piss off Dan Hicken?
Yeah, it's all ratings and content with him. Sometimes, other times he's got good takes. I love his calls on the radio and stuff. Very grateful he's a Hall of Famer and all that kind of stuff. But he's definitely questionable at times.
To be fair, though, he's like any Jaguars fan who decides to have optimism, because I felt like after the Ravens game that this team was going to find a way to the playoffs. As stupid as that sounded. I mean, we were talking about taking a trip down there a month before we ended up doing it. And so Tony's kind of the same with that. And then you've got Pete Prisco, who's just I'm here to make fun of Tony the whole time. And so he just has a field day with it most of the time. But then Tony goes crazy, and says things like, oh yeah, lock it that we're going to beat the Chiefs, And I think people didn't understand that week who the Chiefs were in that game, which was kind of weird. But hey, he's just kind of like most of us fans. We get optimistic and lose sight of reality once in a while.
If we want to sit here and be sad, we can talk about how we had that game and sort of shot ourselves in the foot and gave it away if you want to.
I was already sad enough to witness that in person after witnessing the greatest game in Jaguars history the week before. So I just choose to block it out of my memory, even though I have to see the Chiefs shirts at the supermarket 4 days a week.
That was a tough sound of the game to watch after that Chiefs loss.
I'm not touching that video until we win a Super Bowl.
Oh, man.
Dennis, I know you kind of grew up obviously a Jaguars fan and the old man of the group. You've seen some of the early years. Would you say that Chargers win was the greatest win in the history of our franchise? I mean, I don't know that I would.
I would say it's in the conversation. It is absolutely in the top 5, and it's probably in the top 3.
Yeah.
And if you're a recent, and when I say recent, I mean in the last 5-10 years, Jaguars fans, it's one of the best football games you've ever seen. I was put on this earth in 1988, which makes me the ripe old age of 35 in July. And some of those 90s teams, obviously my football knowledge is a little limited when you're 8 years old or whatever, but, they're terrible in 95 as an expansion team. They go to the AFC Championship in 96. And I remember, Mark Brunell right there after they won the divisional round, yelling out to all the fans that came out at 2 a.m. to go to the stadium and welcome them home, and just, Jacksonville, do you believe in miracles? And that just, that was the bar, that bar, that expectation kind of just hung with you. And I think of the Broncos win in Denver. I think that was that weekend actually. And, the Pittsburgh 2017 playoff game where Blake Bortles, who ran for more yards than he threw for the week before against Buffalo, threw for like 450 yards or something and like 5 touchdowns. There's some good ones out there for sure in the memory banks.
Yeah, I think obviously I've got the bias because I'm a more recent Jaguars fan. I hate to say it, and I'll be thankful for the day when I've been a fan for 20 years or however long it is. But why that game was like number one on the list for me is because being around Kansas City and seeing like how fans are here, watching that game live and watching how the fans reacted felt like the transformation of the Jacksonville franchise into a respectable organization with a bright future. Like that felt to me like the game where you could feel like, okay, this team can go win a Super Bowl. We've got our guys. We've got the pieces. We've got things that very few teams in the NFL have, and we can have the realistic expectation that we'll have a Lombardi trophy in the next 5 to 10 years, or maybe even sooner. That's how I felt about it. Like, it was just amazing seeing that transformation, watching people climb touchdown Jaguar outside of the stadium. Like, it was just awesome to be there. And so,
without a doubt. I mean, the trip down, I'm stationed in Maine currently, so that's not close by. Alan, how many years in a row have you had season tickets now?
5 years. 5 years. It'll be 6 coming up.
5 years, coming up on 6, and been going to a bunch of games before you held season tickets. And I mean, I am not putting that game down by any means, Jacob, because to be there and feel the electricity and to be one of the old guys that knows that, like, there's a reason we play football and there's always a chance to win, and like to watch the fans hang in there and be one of the ones that was saying, you just got to believe, that's got to get one touchdown and build from it. And then to speak that into existence and watch it happen. What a thing to be there for. Like, you picked a great one to make the trip.
I felt like, honestly, like probably the moment we were planning that trip and saying like, hey, if they make the playoffs, we're going to find a way to go down there. I just knew like something crazy was going to happen. Like, it had to happen with how the season was going, the way they were winning games. Like, you could tell that was a game you had to make if they made the playoffs. And we were really lucky with it for sure. I mean, I remember, I hate to throw my brother out, but I can also say I'm a bit of a pessimist and more of a pessimist than him. I just don't show that on here all the time. But I mean, he was talking to me about planning to drive back to Missouri, in the middle of the game when we were down 27-0. But I mean, I think once we scored the first 7 points, that kind of changed. Like, everyone around me started to feel like, we're going to win this game. All they had to do was make one mistake, but it wasn't happening. They were coming back. You're playing the Chargers, who are choke artists, to say the least, and they got it done. And it was awesome. It was an awesome memory, and definitely made myself and I think my brother and a heck of a lot of other people fans for life. Not that I wasn't planning on that before, but it just solidified it even more. Like, it's as weird as it sounds saying it now after how years were before, it is awesome to get to be a Jaguars fan.
Yeah, I will say, not continue rambling on this for too long, but I got some new season ticket neighbors this year. I moved over to section 202, and shout out to my guy Tracy. He always said all season it was always at halftime, we're down, and whenever we're down, these comebacks, he'd always just say 60 effing minutes any given Sunday. That's that they play the games for a reason. And I just remember looking at him at halftime, and I just said, Tracy, you got to say it, because I don't know that I can. But that was just the mindset all season. I will say, for the sake of my mental health and physical health when it comes to my heart, I would love if the Jaguars did not do that to us next year, and we can just go and whoop some ass on some teams and be
Win
done
every
with it.
game
But
65-0. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah,
yeah,
62 to 7 was pretty fun. Something like
Yeah.
that would be good again. Yeah.
God,
Well,
it was so loud after the air had been let out of the stadium, and then we got to that last drive where it needed one more stop and a field goal to win. And I'll never forget. It was louder than the swamp in there. If you've ever been to a college football game, it was awesome.
Yeah, the stadium experiences were crazy. I mean, even the rats were cheering, so it's nice.
the emotional support rats.
Yeah, for sure.
Shout out
I
Jamal
like
Agnew.
how Jamal Agnew has a way with words. He could be a politician.
He's a pro at social media.
Yeah, he's really good.
Well, we've got one question we'll talk about. We kind of talked about it earlier, and then I think we'll kind of wrap this up. Just maybe say like one free agent you want the Jaguars to get, and maybe we'll look at the salary cap situation one last time. But we've got Ron asking about whether you think in the second round of this draft or earlier, like, is it really possible or a good idea for the Jaguars to go select a tight end, such as say Darnell Washington, where he can offer you like kind of that Mercedes Lewis sort of look and also being a really good blocker, or where you guys kind of stand on that?
I think Ron, he just typed in, I think Darnell Washington would be so great for our team. That's kind of took the words out of my mouth there, buddy. I was kind of thinking the same thing, and Jacob, you and I were chatting about it the other night. I don't know that he makes it to us in the second round.
Yeah.
But I also think that 24 is a reach. I think that in order to get him, it would either have to be a trade down from 24 or a trade up in the second round. Which, I mean, I do think he is an absolutely electric player. I will never forget watching him hurdle a guy on TV. I think it was week 1 of the college football season this past year. Yeah, against Oregon on the sideline. I mean, just went up and over the guy. And I legitimately thought it was a right tackle running out there until they said he was a tight end. He's an absolute beast of a man and just a mammoth football player. I just don't know that we have the right draft slot in order for it to line up in our favor. But obviously, I hope it does. I mean, I would be over the moon if we got that guy.
Yeah, that was a franchise-changing stud of a human being, potentially. Everything, and you never know in the draft. Everybody's got Anthony Richardson, who can't hit the broadside of a barn, as potentially going first overall.
Yeah.
Don't get me started. Right?
He's Cam Newton.
Yeah, that's next week. I'm a Gator fan. That we need a whole episode.
Yeah, the roast of Anthony Richardson will be the title of the next podcast potentially. But yeah, he is so good. Like he's huge. Like he would speak to what Doug Peterson probably wants to do. You look at how he won the championship with Philly with a Joe Schmo wide receivers, but some stud tight ends, and Nick Foles at quarterback. Like, look at the quarterback he's got now. Look at the franchise tag tight end, who I don't believe is going to play it down under the actual franchise tag. I think they'll get a deal done before the season.
Agreed.
It would be great, but I agree. I don't think he'll make it that far down. Do I think they'll take a tight end in the draft? I do, because every year since the beginning of football, the Jaguars have been linked to needing to have a great tight end, right? It's just the one position we've never had that real like awesome alpha. And missing Mercedes Lewis, like I'll say, I mean, he stuck around after that 2017 year, but between him and Paul Posluszny leaving, we were never the same again. So to get someone in there who's a household name and who's dominant, I think we'll get there eventually. It may not be this year with tight end, but I think in the coming years we definitely will get someone.
Yeah, he was a big my guy for me. He's definitely someone I'd like to see the team go out and get. And it's one of those situations where it's like, is he the biggest need? Not exactly. I think there's definitely stuff he offers to the team, but the potential of him as a player is absolutely absurd. And I think it's something that, even though we haven't seen Doug Peterson really go after the blocking tight ends before, or at least too often, I'm probably forgetting someone. I think Darnell Washington also fits the Jaguars for the sake of, you look at how Trent Baalke views prospects. He wants the physical freaks, right?
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
If he's there in the second round, do we take him?
I would. He might not be the highest guy on my board, though, because there's also some corners I really like that I think could fall to that second selection. That's where my problem comes with Washington. Because, like, say Tyreek Stevenson's there. Like, he's one person I really like. Or a guy like Deontay Banks ends up falling to that pick. I think he might be gone before a first-round selection, but these corners we really don't know as much with. They might be in a scenario where they need to go after the corner position there. But he would be a good pick. He would be a fantastic pick for this team. You look at his catching ability too. Well, he's not a guy who really produced a ton. And I mean, if you look at his stats, which just doesn't exactly show it, his receiving, he had 200 something yards, I think, this last year. But when he has the ball, he can catch anything thrown his way. He's more athletic for his size than what you think he is. And he even flashed it at the combine again with this ridiculous one-hand catch on the sideline. I think he's a player who is still blossoming and has this ridiculous potential that you want a coach like Doug Peterson to have in his hands. So 100%
when you have
the guy for the Jacksonville.
Yeah, and when one of the best college football tight ends of this generation is playing on the other side of the field as naturally it's going to be tough for you to get the ball. I don't know that necessarily says that he's a bad player or by any means. I think he's absolutely incredible. And you put the ball in his hands, and there's just no telling what could happen from there. And I mean that in a positive way. And typically, as a Jaguars fan, that's a negative thing. There's no telling what he's going to do. But I mean that in a positive way with Washington. So I would be very, very happy to see him in teal next year.
It'd be beautiful. It'd be absolutely beautiful. And he actually had more yards than I thought. He was at 454, which with playing with Brock Bowers, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's Brock Bowers. I think he's all right. I mean, he's okay. Maybe a little more than that, right? But
sure, just a little bit.
Yeah, Washington definitely a player that makes sense for Jacksonville. I just don't know if he's really going to fall to a spot where they can take him, because I think 24 is a bit rich.
Be dream scenario to trade back from where we're at in the first round and pick up a couple extra second round picks and take him early in the second. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that
Agreed.
would be awesome for sure. Now we'll kind of wrap this up, asking you guys, out of everyone left in free agency right now, who would you like to see come to Jacksonville, considering salary cap restraints and all that? Who do you think would be a really good signing for this team?
You want to go first, Alan?
I mean, I think I'm going to take the one that we've talked about. I mean, I would love to bring the mayor back to Jacksonville. I think he fits the salary cap, restraint. I think he fits the need, to be a role model and a leader on that defense. I mean, it was amazing what, those young guys on the defensive line did when he was there. He's a relatively healthy guy. He's playing games. I mean, we saw last year what, when we brought in Corey Peters and what he did, just as an older guy that could just take up space on that line. And he wasn't even as much of a vocal guy. I think Calais Campbell just brings so much to the table. And obviously, part of it's, a bias as far as, bringing back the memories that he gave us here in Jacksonville. But I think that'd be pretty neat to see him come back and retire a Jaguar.
Yeah, I'm on board with that decision too. He's definitely one of the guys I'd love to go after. Dennis,
I'm gonna say Carson Wentz.
Oh,
because
good.
He's got so much. No, I can't use the word that I want to use. I was looking through free agents earlier, and I wrote something down incorrectly. I saw Alex Anzalone on here, who is unfortunately not going to be available.
No.
But just envisioning him and Dewey Wingard flying around on the defense, it was. I mean, that was so Duval, to be honest with you. So I'm looking through right now. I see some guys that I would love to have. I see. Oh, there's an incorrect name. Here's Robbie Anderson when his first name is actually
yeah.
Chosen.
He is chosen for release
Yeah,
the other day.
Chosen Robbie Anderson.
He is chosen to end his career because he's so bad at football.
Give me Mike Gesicki to fill this tight end role that we're talking about. You know, maybe you can get him on maybe he's a little young. Well, 27, he's not that young. Maybe on a 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal, or we can get out of it after the first year.
Prove it deal.
Yeah, Mike Gesicki opposite Evan Ingram. You know, Doug Peterson has his legendary quarterback and his 2 really good pass catching tight ends. Like, I think they'd have a top 3 in the league offense at that point.
Now, isn't he kind of projected to earn a lot? I thought he was one of the top projection out of everyone.
Let's see what market value says here, because wasn't
we can
on the
actually
first page.
Look it up as well. I just think this is
go ahead and throw it on the screen.
Yeah, so this is what I've used for most things, and some of them they are really far off because they're throwing guys up for like double what they should be earning. So
one site linked him to us.
Yeah,
it was
11 million.
4 or 5 days ago. 11 million. Okay, that's a lot.
I don't think he'll go for that. I think he'll be closer to like 9 or 10. But I mean, he is a really good receiving tight end. He would definitely give you your 2 guys for the offense. You know, if Doug Pearson wants to roll with that.
In a dream scenario, right?
Yeah, in a dream scenario. You know, because we dream a lot.
If I can't have my dream, then give me the mayor back. I'm with Alan because he took the guy I was going to say. So
I'm with all you guys too.
Not bad.
I'd throw Calais Campbell out there. I'll give you another one. Maybe a dig back at those Chiefs for taking our star right tackle, but guy I would want. Let me kick this off of offense because he will not have any offensive snaps on here. Justin Houston is a guy I'd love to steal. And I'll tell you why. Because Houston plays quite a bit as that 3-4 outside linebacker, can stand up more. That allows you to move Trayvon more to the line so you can get his hand in the dirt, get him more in his natural position, so that's going to help there. Houston's played a very limited amount on the field as he gets older because this is a guy who's been around for only God knows how long really at this point. If you don't know much about Houston as well, we'll just go back and show you how many sacks he had in 2014. 23 sacks. He was a star player for the Kansas City Chiefs, one of their franchise cornerstones. He's been more limited in his snap counts recently, but I mean, you see this last year, dude was a monster getting sacks. I thought it was 9. Apparently it's 12, but he was pretty cheap with them. He was earning like $3.5 million. I would be comfortable throwing a decent deal at Justin Houston. I don't think you've got to pay him a ton of money, but you can get a lot of production out of him. You get a leader, and you also get a guy from the Kansas City Chiefs and get back at them a little bit for what they've done. I believe he's available. I'm not sure if he shows up on here. Hopefully I'm right.
That sounds I keep referencing 2017. That sounds eerily similar to the Patriots signing James Harrison like 3 weeks before the playoffs started. And he had just come off the Steelers, and that's when we were getting overlooked. Like, oh yeah, it's going to be a Steelers-Pats AFC Championship game, and James Harrison going against his former team, and he ate our lunch, unfortunately, when we went to New England. But that's a great name. It's a great name to bring up.
Yeah, and he actually, so the official sack numbers, to get it right, it was 9.5 sacks. He did this on ultimately, what was it, like 423 snaps on the field this last year. Less than half the time most of those guys are on the field, or about half. So insanely productive for the amount he's on the field. Still got juice left in him. This guy's going to want to go win a Super Bowl. He's one of those guys that makes a ton of sense for me to the Jaguars, whether it happens or not. other guy I'd throw out that we talked about earlier was Sean Murphy Bunting, but we already hit that subject. I think Houston ultimately fits one of your big needs on defense with
he elevates your young guys too, just by being out there.
Yep.
Just even if he doesn't get the sack, one of the other guys might because he's there.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll wrap this up. We're just gonna take a look back at the cap situation right now to finish this up. So right now we're sitting around about $7 million available. You can see him make some moves. I think it's possible, like mentioned before, I can't remember who mentioned it, but Evan Ingram getting extended. You could see a move like that. Josh Allen's also a player who could get it. Jamal Agnew, you can also throw on that list. So if they make moves like that, you're increasing your cap space available. You're getting these guys around for the next season as well and beyond. And so you can see money become available that way. You could see them sign a couple players with their cap space right now for this next season. If they don't make any big moves, the Jaguars are going to be in a good cap situation the following season, and they will probably have about 3 or 4 guys they want to re-sign. Now, there's big names on there. If Ingram or Josh Allen are extended, they're going to be the big names. Calvin Ridley is the other one. So ultimately, while it might be kind of boring right now, not being able to see big news, unless I just missed something in the last hour, it ultimately for the Jaguars is probably a good thing for the future because it means we're going to be able to keep around the core of players that is currently here.
Yeah. I mentioned this earlier. We have such a great team right now. That's the crazy part is you don't need to go and blow all your money right now hoping to get a better team because you have a really great team right now. You haven't even seen Calvin Ridley play it down yet. You could call the offense good. You could figure out some sort of rookie solution for the offensive line situation. You can say, we're good. We're not doing anything else because they're that good. And you mentioned 3 guys. I don't know if Josh Allen will be a franchise tag conversation at the end of the season or not. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point and they find a way to get a deal. But Agnew, you'd love to see him stay around as well. There's not a lot to move. There's a couple of needs, but there's not any glaring needs other than maybe nickel corner. But there's subtle changes through the draft and through a couple of short-term, nobody free agent signings are the only tweaks this team really needs at this point. There's always a better upgrade. There's always a shinier thing out there that you can go find. But this team, as it stands right now, can make a run with the experience they have now, and that's through all the comeback victories this year. That's obviously what they were missing is the experience. They have that now. And you take this exact same roster and put them out there next year, I think they win 13 games with no problem in a terrible division, which we didn't even get to hit on tonight. But
yeah.
I'm so excited for the future.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Dennis. I mean, I think that they mentioned it on 1010 the other day. I think it was on Lunch with Leon on the lunch hour. There's it's crazy to think that the Jaguars should not lose a divisional game next year. I mean, obviously that's optimistic, and when you get to play in those rivalry games, and you're probably going to drop 1 or 2, and it is what it is. But I mean, realistically, if you look strictly at our roster on paper compared to the rest of our division, we should have this division wrapped up by Thanksgiving, or between Halloween and Thanksgiving when you just look at how bad those other teams are. So it's a hell of a time to be a Jaguars fan. I mean, that's for sure. And I just can't wait.
It's the AFC East of the 2000s is what it's shaping up to, where you have 1 juggernaut and 3 duds, and you just mow them down. Like the cards are coming down on the table. This team is set up to be a powerhouse in the NFL.
They really are. And what's so beautiful is we're witnessing for the first time the Jacksonville Jaguars send the Tennessee Titans into a rebuild. Is that not beautiful? I mean, you look at like their team. I mean, they don't even have an offensive lineman outside of Andre Dillard right now that can start. They just signed him. They have 4 holes there. The Colts, losing players left and right now, have made no moves. And the Texans, they're making moves, but they're just random guys. Like, they're not really going to be huge impacts, you think, unless they just are magicians, and knew something that no one else did. So it's definitely a really good time to be a Jaguar fan. We're expecting the playoffs. We're still going to expect some moves here soon. Might have to wait for it. We'll have another live stream here sometime soon. I don't know exactly what we'll be covering. Probably free agency again, if we see some signings, some more developments. But yeah, thank you guys for coming on the show, though. I appreciate it. It was a really fun time.
No, thank you, Jacob, for having us. Everybody out there in comment land, thank you for spending time with us tonight. And we look forward to doing it with you again in the future.
Yeah, we'll definitely run it back.
Yep. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. This was I really enjoyed it. Great conversation. And, just to piggyback on what Dennis said, shout out to all the guys here in the comments. We see Ron, you've been all over it the whole time. And,
Ron is the man.
And Byron's had some comments in there too. So we really appreciate it. And, feel free to keep any questions coming, and, we'd be happy to talk about it on the next one.
For sure. That's why we're here. We want to talk about the Jaguars. So, all the activity, just really the last month and a half. Appreciate it. Hit us up with any messages you want. We will talk back to you. So, thank you all for watching. I appreciate your time. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope the Jaguars make some noise so we can talk about that. But until then, go Jags. We'll see you later.